Patterson, and I'd like to welcome you on to another episode of Honestly Single. We are officially in the month of February. January has ended. It's just incredible to me for whatever reason that we're already a month into the new year. It's a lot to process for me personally, but there have been some great milestones along the way. I know this month hasn't passed by as quickly for some people. I guess it just depends on your experience, but I remember seeing Facebook posts for some people and they were just talking about, they were just like, yo, it feels like January 73rd out here. And I thought that was kind of funny, but whatever the case, here we are in a new month, and I've got some new content for you all that I think you'll enjoy and be just really enriched by altogether. And going back to the milestones I was talking about, I've been just, really exploring my entrepreneurial potential. So I would like to say that I successfully had my first pop-up. So at the residence where I live, the front office actually hosted a small business event. So small businesses were available to set up tables and advertise their stuff. So I had some graphic tees on hand and a handful of some self-published books. And I pretty much, I made probably around $132 over the weekend. But that Friday I had sold somewhere up in the 70s. So it was a successful venture. It was my first pop-up. So I'm just happy to announce that all went well. If you all would like to check out my stuff and some of the things that I do, in addition to being a public speaker and an author, I am also very much an artist, and I have a business called Vicarious Prints. I have the links in the description of the video, but you could check out my print shop, some of the merchandise I have available. You see something you like, feel welcome to pick it up. I'll also provide the link to my second published work. It's my first book of poetry. I titled it Anointed Archives Volume 1. You can check that out as well in the description. So I've got those posted up there. But today, as far as the overall subject of this video, I just really wanted to talk about discernment and the importance that discernment holds throughout the course of your dating or your soul-searching journey. I wanted to start off with discernment, but the first thing that I wanted to do was take the time for us to reach an understanding as to exactly what discernment is. So I was a great note taker in school, high school and college, but I've got the definition of discernment here. So I wanted to start out by reading that. So discernment is defined as the quality of being able to grasp and comprehend what is obscure. I'll repeat that one more time. Discernment is the quality of being able to grasp and comprehend what is obscure. That's the Merriam-Webster definition of discernment. An alternate definition is the ability to judge well. Simply put, the ability to judge well. But going back to the first definition, something that's obscure is something that is not easily defined. Of course, it's something that can be partially hidden or blocked altogether. So, when you say something that is obscure, it's something that's not quite clear. So when it comes to using discernment in dating, well, we could say something like this. We'll just say that dating requires the ability to grab and understand what you can't easily see, what isn't obvious. Dating requires discernment, aka grabbing and understanding what's not obvious. So, we could put it that way, or, if we go with the briefer definition, or simpler, the ability to judge well. Yes, dating can require the ability to judge well, or more specifically, the ability to identify what's not easily seen and make a proper judgment of it. So if we look at how discernment looks in the context of dating, discernment, bottom line, basically challenges us not just to spot details that are not easily seen, but make quality decisions based on that information. So the discernment is really important. I'm sure most of us here have learned by now that what we immediately see upon entering the dating phase certainly isn't all that there is to know. Oftentimes you'll hear a lot of people say, whoever you meet, at that dining table or wherever you are, whoever's sitting next to you in that movie seat, that's not the real person. That's really just a representative. But we still fall victim to the same tricks. Honestly, when you look at the dating landscape today, all it takes, at least from the perspective of men, a good number of men, heterosexual men, is just looking at a woman with the right proportions. As long as she's got the lips, hips, and fingertips, voila, she's a suitable match. Sometimes for women, they get caught up on the empty promises of a male suitor they happen to be attractive with, at least for heterosexual women. They hear him, he says all the right things, even the things that he does. They discern what they feel is love or true compassion from the things that he does, which, may just be, subtle tactics meant to get her approval. And all of a sudden she's sold. But, then let's say you get somewhere past the wedding ring or past the first few dates, and all of a sudden he starts lapsing in his capacity to care for her. And all of a sudden it's almost like the tables turn. Now he thinks it's all about him. So you just really can't judge based on those superficial details. And also along, with these practices, there's all kinds of phrases, you... In terms of the information that you receive, from people, you'll have the person who tells you, hey man, her body is banging. You mean to tell me you ain't gonna hit that? Or you got the lady passing on bad advice and she'll be like, hey, don't date him. Remember, he's a Scorpio. And, all of these other prejudicial assumptions, the ones I used to hear from high school friends all the time. It's like, hey, you better pick up these good girls while they're around because quality girls are scarce. Guys are just snatching them up left and right. And so many others. He's got a lot of money. He can take care of you. All of that. We judge people, by so many different things. We assess people on so many different details, except for the details that actually matter. I'm going to make the argument right off the bat that none of these things matter, and I'm also going to follow up by explaining why. So, there have been people who throughout history, the whole history of soul searching, that unrecorded book that hasn't been published yet. But there have been a whole other people throughout history who have been connected by some of the most dynamic circumstances. And I'd like to actually start with the testimony of my parents, my mother and father. They came from two somewhat different backgrounds. There are things that they had in common, but there are also things that separated them. So beginning with my mother was raised in a very hectic and abusive household. She was the middle child out of three kids. She says that middle kids have it the hardest. Me being the eldest of three, I try to relate. I know I can't perfectly relate, but I can kind of see that. But, she was just caught in some really difficult in-between places. She had, there was a father who wasn't entirely present all the time and also involved in active military service, and a mother who was very much mentally ill and would take out her aggression, her anger and her unresolved mental health issues on her children. And this would ultimately push my mother to run away from home at the age of 15. She bounced around to a bunch of different houses, and eventually she ended up at the doorstep of my dad and his mom, my grandmother on my dad's side. My dad also raised in a single parent household. His father wasn't involved in his life because unfortunately he was his father, my grandfather, was strung up on a load of drugs and alcohol. So my dad grew up in a single parent household under a very caring mother who sacrificed everything for him. And he just grew up, deriving, fatherly references just from his uncles. His cousins were more like his brothers. But as far as what he understood, as far as being the leader in a family and properly treating a woman, and just being good as a dad when his time came, those were things that he picked up from his uncles. They were his points of reference. So here you have two distinct individuals, who come from, some not so ideal backgrounds, but they're connected, by the most dynamic circumstances. And no, it wasn't an easy process. It's extremely awkward, actually living with the woman of your life throughout a certain course of time, going up through high school, separating in college, going through a lot of different tribulation and, ultimately, they can credit their reunion to just the work in the hands of God, because there are a lot of things that could have perpetually separated them. Some of it was a little bit of awakening love before its time. Some of it was just what we call generational curses, just issues that have affected families, especially in the black community for years and years on end. And then there are also periods of time when they were seeing other people. My mom and dad weren't always seeing each other. They had other romantic interests, other dating interests. But fast forward through all of that and all of the memories made and all of the powerful lessons learned, and as of this year, they are 32 years married. Specifically, as of mid-January of this year. So January is a special month for them. Their birthdays are also in January. So as you can imagine, there's a load of partying and a lot of damage done to bank accounts. But, it's a tremendous blessing. They have a story that can't be compared to any other. And it just shows you how dynamic a love journey can be. You look, even extending beyond my parents. But, one thing I'd like to say real quick is there's a gentleman I follow, an influential black gentleman named Dr. Boyce Watkins, and he said, one challenge with black families can be having to start everything from square one each generation. But I'm proud to say that my parents took careful measures to make sure that their kids didn't have to endure, what they endured. So they set us up quite well and raised us quite well. As some of you can tell. But other than that, I just use that to cite an example of just how extraordinary the soul searching process can be. That matchmaking isn't always a result of the most obvious assumptions. I mean, you just even look with celebrities. You look at people like Christina Hendricks and Joffrey Arrin. They were married for about a decade or so. But, when Christina was married to Joffrey, I mean, Christina's, exceptionally beautiful on all accounts. Joffrey isn't exactly the guy who, women would put at the top of their wish list. But one thing you'll know about Christina, if you look at her interviews, some things recorded in articles about, even her quotes, what she's actually expressed about what she values in men. She can be very traditional. She looks more so at a man's internal qualities and what he demonstrates in terms of his character, and also just good old-fashioned chivalry. She's the type of lady who actually appreciates it and will esteem a man if he takes the time to hold open the door for her and simply treat her right in public spaces. Not, just in private, but in public spaces as well. You also look at, Russell Wilson and Sierra. Everybody's bashing Russell on social media because he doesn't look like the type of guy Sierra, quote unquote, ought to be with. Sierra was formerly with Future, the celebrity rapper, the guy who heavily promotes thug culture and, degrading women, all of that unpleasant stuff. But, Sierra was looking for stability. So, in spite of the fact that Russell in some areas may be a bit of a cornball, at the end of the day, he takes care of his wife and he takes care of their kids, and Sierra sought that stability and that accountability. You even look at a lot of female models in today's world, female supermodels. You'll find that in some cases the men they're married to tend to be guys whose faces you probably forget within 2 seconds of seeing, but because of their influence, the quality of their character, the posture of their hearts, and simply their willingness to be present, their hard working, their work ethic. They get to enjoy, fruitful relationships, with women who are really looking for a man with vision, not just a man, with a good body, with rock hard abs and nice looks, but a man that's really going somewhere and has perspective beyond the scope of his sexual appetite. So I just wanted to share all of that right off the bat. And again, this is all ties in with the discernment. What you immediately see on the surface isn't all that there is to know. I know couples, firsthand. I know a pastor who's actually married to a woman who he hated when they were coworkers in the workspace. How they got together, I have no idea. That's a whole nother story. But the simple fact that they are together, just shows how extraordinary connections can be. I've even got a supervisor who still makes fun of his wife's voice to this very day, but they're still married, and they should stay married as long as he keeps those jokes, I guess between him and the workplace, and not allows his wife to hear it. But I just want to say all of that, just as a precursor before I get deeper into this discernment discussion. We really have to train ourselves to start looking beyond the shell that people come in. There's plenty of women shaped like Coke bottles. Problem is, if that Coke bottle is full of venom, you're just setting yourself up for destruction. There's plenty of men with full pockets and empty souls. So you have to be very careful. It can be an unpleasant trade-off when you get into a transactional interaction like that, as far as, connections with men are concerned. But I wanted to share those things, and also just to go a little bit deeper, there was an interesting question raised by a friend of mine on Facebook, and she had this question directed to the men, and she just asked, what is one thing you wish women knew or understood about you? And my response was simple. I just told her that mutual interest does not equate to let's start a relationship. So I'll repeat that. Mutual interest does not equate to let's start a relationship. Just because we're interested in each other doesn't mean that I'm trying to jump stuff off right off the bat. There's a lot of careful steps that you have to take in between those two phases. So personally, when I tell a woman, hey, I look forward to getting to learn more about you, what I'm basically saying is that my research process has begun. So this is where I start studying you from a number of different perspectives. Again, I mentioned some things earlier that I'm personally looking out for. I'm looking for character. I'm looking for an attitude and the spirit of self-sacrifice. And I want to know at the end of the day where your heart is coming from, where your heart is. That's why I talk about the importance of the posture of the heart. And in order to reach these answers, you have to ask certain questions, of course. You have to ask questions like, for me, it would be, where has this woman been, as relationship wise, what relationship has she been involved in, or relationships in times past, and how has she handled those experiences? Has she really matured out of those experiences, or is she still dealing with baggage from unresolved heart issues? Another thing that I would like to know is, is she trustworthy? Is she accountable? How does she respond, to injustice? How does she respond to being disappointed? Is she the type to be wrathful and vengeful? Or does she know how to forgive, put things in their place, and move forward and be the bigger woman? Also, I ask questions such as, what is her work ethic like? Is she hardworking? How does she react when responsibility is placed on her shoulders? Because, of course, that's going to translate also, to how she acts in the context of a family when it comes to taking care of the generations following us if we choose to have children. All of these questions are really important questions to ask. Also, there's another one, and I'm glad it came to mind. What are her relatives like? What's her family like? For those truly invested in someone from the long run, marriage is serious. That marriage is basically a merger or a union of two, what can often be two completely different worlds. So you have to check and see, okay, is this the kind of lady who, how well will I get along with her relatives? Is there going to be friction? Will we be able to form a compromise? What are those people like? Because, it's not just her coming into her life, it's all of her crazy uncles, it's her cousin Pookie, and Moo Moo and Mimi and the rest of those crazy munchkins, but you just have to be ready and prepared for that. And these are all important things that you'll find out in time. This is why it's okay to start out as someone's friend, just being an accountable and sociable companion and seeing what you can learn about people. Because it's really all a matter of time if you really want that kind of love that lasts. For the people who are just out to eat, who are just going out to eat and get a hold of something, this isn't going to have much value to them. But to those who are genuinely invested, these are the kinds of things that we need to start talking about. So we've discussed character. There are two components. I place a strong emphasis on character and chemistry. So some of you might want to know, okay, well, what do you mean by chemistry? Because I didn't exactly get along with that subject in high school. Well, let me clarify. So when it comes to chemistry, this is where we get into finding out if, an individual really is equipped with the tools to complement where you're going. This comes down to their ability. It comes down to their vision. Are they a visionary? Do they have a plan? And simply, their talents, how well they complement what you're doing how well they can help, work together with you to form a functional plan for both of your lives, for the lifelong journey of marriage and of a committed relationship. And I think this is important because a lot of times we tend to have the wrong perspective. There's a pastor I know who wrote an article, and I thought he had a great opinion on this matter, but he was just saying people are making the big mistakes of looking for a soulmate, for an SOUL mate. They're looking for someone who, is the pop to their corn, not necessarily from an ability perspective, but that person who, is interested in the same things that they're interested in, the person who finishes their sentences, who wants to do everything that they want to do at a given moment. And what we should really be looking for, according to what this pastor was writing, was an SOLE mate, a soulmate, someone who is equipped with the ability and the endurance to run with us through the marathon of life and overcome its different challenges and hurdles. So according to this pastor, the individual that we should actually be looking for is someone who really is equipped with the ability to join us, join us simply on those challenges that come with commitment, all of the hurdles when it comes to financial management, when it comes to planning for a house, all of those individual things. But somebody who truly is looking in the long term and isn't just trying to connect with someone based on how they feel or who they feel can satisfy, whatever desire they have. So, bottom line, we should be looking for people who we can build a legacy with. Love is an incredible component. It's always going to be a vital component in relationships. But as the rapper Mitchell West, aka Street Hymn, said, it's critical not just to marry for love, but to also marry for legacy. So whoever you choose to connect with, bottom line, you want to look for someone who is like-minded, who is really on the same board, on board with you in terms of their values and their perspective, and somebody who really has a plan and a set goal. That way you two can achieve the end result. But the benefit to achieving that end result is you have a reliable partner you can count on. So ultimately, when it comes to functional relationships, we're looking for character. We got to find out exactly who this person is at their core, and then we're also looking for chemistry. Do they have the ability? Are they equipped with the talents and the skill set to complement where I'm going? And at the end of the day, we have to evaluate ourselves and make sure that we're the right person, for the person we're investigating. It's not just about looking out for that other individual, but also just looking into ourselves and evaluating ourselves to see if our talents, our skills, our abilities, and even our character and the posture of our hearts really complement them. So at the end of the day, it's really important to be on the same page with your partner, with your person of interest. So bottom line, just to summarize all of this stuff together, when it comes to dating, again, discernment is absolutely crucial. We can look at a lot of things. Like I was in a season myself where, I was looking at women. I was looking at, their nails. I was looking at the beauty of their shape. I was even looking at the positive qualities that I observed, in their character and how they behaved. But it's just as important to look past women. So for me, I'm at a point where I look beyond those things, and I'm just really looking at, the experiences, the attitudes, the mindset that, has really come to shape who they are, and is governing also where they're going. Not just where they are presently, but where they're looking to go to. Human beings are really complex creatures. We're influenced by so much. There's so much that dictates our perspective and outlook on life, our opinions on life. We have past experiences that influence present opinions. And as a result of those present opinions, you can also determine, what an individual's future action may be. So it's good to look at all of those things. And also, while healing is a subject for another time, it's definitely a discussion for another episode. It's important to really be at a place where both individuals have made peace with their past. Just like, it's crucial for your love interest to really be at a place where they put the old aside and they're at a level of maturity and character where they're prepared to embrace the new. You have to check yourself as well. You have to ask yourself, bottom line, is it really in my best interest to be involved in the dating arena at this time? Am I the right person for that right person? Have I really prepared myself to steward the responsibilities that come with a substantial, lasting relationship? So we have to take the time to evaluate ourselves and make sure our hearts are in the right place, and that we're prepared for that journey, and that we're not liable to make other people victims of our unresolved trauma. So I just wanted to share all of that with you. I understand that there are going to be people who may dismiss you as a prude, or say that you're overthinking things because you're looking to date intentionally. But I want to take a moment to encourage you and remind you that the investment is well worth it. If it can keep you out of harm's way, if it can protect you from unhealthy distractions, and instead set you up for a really worthwhile investment, then practicing discernment is certainly worth it. It's certainly key, and I'm happy to lead you through these principles. So I just wanted to take the time to share that with you. Now, remember, this is just the second phase. There are several things that I planned on talking about just to open up this year, and that was patience, discernment, peace, and letting the heart win. So those are the four key things. And today we have discussed discernment. But I wanted to thank you all for your time. If you appreciate the content from this post, from this latest episode, please feel welcome to like, comment, and subscribe, and also turn your notifications on. That way you'll know when I'm posting a new episode. I work to get them out as soon as I can. I can have a busy schedule, but I'm churning these out as soon as possible. Other than that, again, be sure to check out my print store, Vicarious Prints, and in my book. I've got the links in the bio. And I just want to thank you all for your time. You have an outstanding week. Enjoy your weekend. Stay safe and be blessed. Take care.